I'm Matt Van Horn. She's Megan Smith, self-storage CPA, and this is the 3 Mile Domination Show. Welcome back, everyone. This is Matt Van Horn with the 3 Mile Domination Show with my new co-host, Megan Smith, the self-storage CPA. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Well, it has been a while since 3 Miles put up any new videos or anything like that. We've been extremely busy, as everybody in this industry has been. But we're going to start getting back to doing this on a regular basis. And today we're going to talk about a topic that's on everyone's mind, which is new development. Where are we? Where is it coming from? And how do we think it's going to affect us? And right now, Megan and I were talking about it previously before we got on here. We are in a very, very different market than we were even 5 years ago, in my opinion.
Even 2 years ago, it seems, right? Jeez.
It's crazy. If you're an independent self-storage owner right now and you either own properties, in markets maybe that are secondary markets, not top 50 MSAs, or you're getting into the business, which I get a lot of phone calls and things through LinkedIn and Facebook, things like that. I know you do, for people interested in getting in, want to learn about the business. It's a very scary time right now, especially if you're not seasoned or understand what is going on or where you should build or how it should look. It's getting really scary out there in terms of the individual owners. I keep hearing things that, we'll be fine on the supply. Everything's going to be great. Well, yeah, but if you're focused on a micro market, which is probably 3 miles, they really aren't 5 miles anymore. Or if you're in a smaller or a bigger market, like I say in New York City, where it's probably blocks, that doesn't necessarily mean anything if the national problem is going to be okay. What you're worried about is what your micro market's going to do and what the rates are going to do. And right now, I'm just, places like Denver and Texas, and we're going to talk about this, are starting to feel the effects of all this supply.
Right. Houston, Charlotte.
Mm-hmm. North Carolina.
All those places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was looking.
And it's scary for the individual owner who is like our customer, right? That's who I work with, not the guy who owns 100, but the guy that owns 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 10.
Right.
And you do as well. And then what do they do? How do they react? What do they need to do to get prepared for the next 1, 2, 3, 5 years down the road?
Yeah. If you're listening to this and you've been cutting back on all of your expenses because life has been good, we were 90% occupied for the past 5 years. And I want to even preface this. When I first got in the industry, and I'm going back to 2000, it was rare to have a property that was 90% occupied on a regular basis. It really was. I know the technology's gotten better and the way we follow up with customers and the job as a self-storage manager is absolutely different than it was when I started in the industry. But this idea of complete 90% occupancy all the time is fairly new, actually, at least to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't see this wonderful little thing that we have going on lasting forever.
Right. Not in some of these markets. And it's already not, right? We saw something in Houston that a smaller owner built, or I'm not sure who built, and right next door to him is a large REIT, and now they're competing on $40-something 10x10s, climate controlled.
It's absolutely amazing. I was doing some market research in Texas. I'm not going to get too far into where, but and it's funny because I didn't talk to any of these people. I can just see what's happening. And there was a REIT that built right next to an independent owner who built a gorgeous multi-story facility. It's a Class A facility. It's gorgeous. The REIT built probably a Class A facility too. I think it was about 5 stories. The one that the independent owner owned was about 3 stories. And when you did the market study and you looked at the rates, you could see that the REIT was actually squeezing the small guy. It was very blatant because we know what these things cost to build. And when you're looking at it from that aspect and then what the rates that he's getting or what they're advertising, both he and the REIT, there's just absolutely no way you can compete and cover your loan based on what those rates were.
Mm-hmm. That's the scariest part as a developer, because I develop and own too, so we always look around and see where can somebody come in and hurt us? Are we taking on too much debt? Are we risking too much? What's the right number? Nobody knows, right? The joke in our development team is give me the number. Like there's one magical number that'll make everything work. And there's not. There's lots of factors to consider, but I think that's the fear. And the more I speak at shows and stuff, that seems to sort of be what I'm hearing. Is the development, is there anything left? Where do we go from here? So what advice would you give to the smaller independent owners that are looking to kind of, competition proof themselves, if that's such a thing?
Yeah, there really isn't, because in terms of competition proofing yourself, it's hard. I mean, you're always going to have
Mm-hmm.
competition. We hear that, and I'm going to go back historically a little bit. I mean, the last development cycle, if that's what you want to call it, that we had was '05, '06, '07, right in that area, '04. But what happened is we built all this storage, which we oversupplied it last time. We seem to be doing a little bit better this time, but I don't think but it's not over yet. So we're going to find out. But we went smack into the financial crisis. And then part of what happened was, even though we oversupplied it in those years, or at least this is my theory, development stopped. Obviously, everybody knows the banking system froze up. You couldn't get a construction loan. I mean, that just wasn't going to happen. So basically, we were stuck with the existing supply for a number of years, and the demographics changed. The country grew. All of these properties filled up, and then we're all at 90%. Then we started off this huge acquisition phase. Prices of storage facilities are sitting in 5 and 6 caps, even if they're, almost regardless of what they really are. And now we're into this development phase, and another development cycle, if that's what you want to call it. But I don't think it's going to be a cycle this time. I think it's going to be a continuous development in our industry for people who can find areas that they think they'll work, because the money is out there. Unless that money gets cut off again, I don't think it's going to stop. Now, the gas pedal will either be all the way to the ground, or it will start to be leveled off. And depending on the market and what the interest rates are and what cap rates are and things like that, you're going to have this maybe phasing in of supply. But I think the idea that supply is going to basically stop, or competition is going to stop based on, like it did in the mid 2000s, I think that's a fantasy. I don't think that's going to happen again.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you.
I mean, I think we're already seeing it. That example that we just talked about with the REIT and the independent owner, because I work only for independent owners as well. And that's a very, very plausible scenario for those of you who are developing. You have to do your homework. And I mean, Megan's very good at this. I do feasibility studies. You have to do your homework. You have to know what's going in the market. You have to know what rates you need to get. You have to know, what your budget is, what's your rent-up schedule going to be. How are you going to refinance this thing? What is that cap rate projected to be? If you're all projecting 5s, good luck 3 years from now if that's what it's still going to be, because we know the Fed is raising interest rates. How fast they do it, well, that seems to be a little shaky at the moment, but they've already said they're going to be doing it. So what are your rates going to be? What is your NOI going to be in that year that you're going to be refinancing? And what do you think that cap rate's going to be? And if it doesn't pencil out, guys, don't do it. I see too many Hail Marys on these kind of things. It's like, oh, well, if I build the most brand new special thing in the market, even though everybody else is 70% and there's already 2 other ones in rent up, if I build the newest best thing, I'll rent up. And it never works that way. At least it hasn't in my experience.
Right. And absorption swings those numbers hugely is something that I'm learning as I'm learning development. So I would say take your absorption from your feasibility and cut it in half, and then cut it in half again and see if it still works. So do worst case, really just put it all out on the table and get unmarried from the deal and get unexcited. Look at the numbers and look at a worst case scenario and say, can I pay out of pocket on this thing if I don't absorb what I think I'm going to absorb? Because that really could happen. You could get something dropped next to you, and a deal that works based on a, 40 unit absorption a month just is not going to get those numbers.
No, you're absolutely right. And the other thing I found too is, and the REITs will play this game as well because they can. The first thing that a lot of independent owners do, and in this situation, no matter what it is, whether they even own an existing property or they develop one of the first things they do is they lower the rates. Especially if you're in rent up and you're on this 36-month timetable to get this thing refinanced, you have a balloon payment coming up, or however it is that you have when your principal and interest kicks in. People start getting scared. They're not hitting the occupancy numbers that they projected. The business is harder than what they thought. And it is a business, guys. It has its own laws, verbiage, nuances, and ways of doing business to make money.
So your manager, who's the great salesperson, quits, and now you have to find a new one who's not as strong of a salesperson.
Yep.
It's only as good as the person answering the phone.
Yep. And the systems that you install. And for those of you who have existing properties and you've been cutting your expenses because you've been 90%. So let's say we've rolled back those marketing expenses 75%. That's going to come back to bite you at some point. Because what you need, even if you are full, I mean, that sweet spot is 90 to 94% where you're practicing regular revenue management. You need those marketing techniques to be bringing new people in. And the thing that's hard about marketing, and when I talk about these things, I've learned it because when I started, I made mistakes, and Megan did as well. We're doing it. We're saying this because we've managed these things forever. When you cut those back, it's very hard to get that consistency of your marketing back when you have to restart it. It just doesn't work that way. It's like when you're rolling a boulder down the hill. You get it going down the hill, it's one thing, but to push it up to that peak to get it going down the hill, that's a lot of work. And you can't just flip the switch on like you can, to turn on a light.
Right. And I have a new property. So I have a nice website. I pay a professional company and I turned on Sparefoot. So what else do I need to do to market to fill this place up?
Well, I mean, you have to have a referral program. I think the top three things that I've seen across the board, and it's constantly proven out. Obviously, drive-by is important, but I think Google Maps and stuff is helping with that. But you want to get those people that are just coming in or that are local, because, again, one of the top reasons that someone does choose a facility is it close to my home or business. The second thing is you have to have a web program, guys. If you don't have a website right now, you are way, way behind. But then you need to start looking at other options. Like Megan just said, Sparefoot. I mean, there was it's just an aggregator for those of you who don't know what that is. It's kind of like a hotels.com for the storage industry, but you need to have a comprehensive web program. I'm talking about pay-per-click. I'm talking about having a YouTube strategy and videos and, landing pages. And if you're doing offline marketing, it should be leading online as well. You need to have a website. It has to have your pricing on there. For those of you who are, especially you independent owners who have not put pricing on the websites, guys, you have to do that. You're not helping yourself by keeping someone like me from not learning what your prices are, what your customers are doing. They're going online and they're seeing the 6 facilities in the area that do have price, and they're just not even considering you because it's too much of too much of a waste of their time to try to find out what your prices are when they have the 5 other ones right in front of them. It's just silly. And then having a strong referral program. You can easily bring in 15% of your rentals from a referral program if it's pushed properly. Now, those are the top 3. Once you start getting out of there, it's what I like to call the shotgun approach. You're going to have strategic alliances with your realtors, with your apartment complexes, with your movers, things like that. And then you're also going to do strategic alliances that's what we like to call it, with local businesses and things like that, and pull that in, because really your most expensive customer to acquire is what I call that last mile occupancy. From say 80 to 95%, that's your most expensive customer. If you're doing the first 3 right, and you have and then also again, preface this by saying you have a good manager in there that can sell. That's 75 to 80% of this, and then it goes to that shotgun approach of where can I get people in, and that's where you have to put the money in, and that is the most expensive part for people. And if you are running a budget, those of you who are developing. If you put a budget together and say, hey, my break-even point, which scares me to death, is 90%,
Don't do it. Stop.
Yeah, that's a real hard number to hold. And I mean, I'm talking about the trillion loan. And then some of you are thinking, okay, well, I'll build this thing. I'm going to rent it up and flip it to a REIT.
Right.
It's real hard to say what they'll be doing in 4 and 5 years. And it's also very difficult to say what a lot of this outside money that's coming into our industry, which has just been flooding our industry, what that money is going to do in 3 to 4 years. Once this thing starts to even out, which it's going to hit equilibrium, which it will, and then we got to get back to really managing, and we're going to find out who knows how to run these things. That money is going to disappear. So either, if you're developing right now and you're an independent owner, develop for what you think the business is, that it's a solid investment, and then look at an exit strategy. But because if you can't keep it up, keep that occupancy up, keep that revenue up, and refinance for what you're, putting into it, you're going to have a problem in a couple of years.
Right. Don't bank on future cash flow. Don't bank on a cap rate to get out of it. Look at cash flow, make sure it actually makes sense. Absolutely. Is what I always tell people. What do you think about that?
And then project that NOI on a common sense cap rate. You're not going to get a 4.5, most likely. Right. I mean, all the worlds have to align to get that to happen correctly. So, and then also, read the industry material. I know the REITs, I read all the quarterly calls from every REIT every quarter. And they're saying right now that they're expecting rent up to be 36 to 48 months on a lot of their stores. That's what they're projecting. So, so if you have a 3-year construction loan and then you switch to you either have to refinance your balloon or you have to switch to a permanent loan that does principal and interest, and you need to do that within, say your construction loan's 36 months and you have to do that within 24 because it's going to take you 9 to 12 to build it, then and if you're not there to be able to cover that, that is a problem. Now you're starting to look at bridge loans and higher interest rates, and then you may start cutting money from things you need to do like marketing and things, and it's just a downward spiral from there a lot of times. So you have to be
or saving on payroll, which is usually the most expensive cost, but also brings you the most money.
Yeah. And
right?
property taxes. Don't forget property taxes when we talk about expenses. They've been hammering our industry hard lately.
Yeah, yeah, and that's not going to stop.
No, it's not. And in places like
Right,
Florida, if you're developing here, in a lot of markets, it's easily 2% of your project cost. Easily.
right, right. Forget
It's
about New Jersey, where it's insane.
Oh yeah, and it gets worse when you get into some other states. But I mean, especially like a state
Hmm.
like Florida, like us, where we don't have a state income tax, they hit us on the
Right,
property taxes much harder than even in some of the other
right.
states. It's really crazy. But when we were talking about supply, I mean, I was looking at the most recent Yardi report, and I'm not going to read every line of it here because I'm sure they wouldn't appreciate that. But we'll hit some of the
I think we should try.
yeah, but we're going to hit some of the highlighted areas here. And one thing I do want to hit is what they're showing in the decline in rates in certain markets. Now, you already typically
Okay.
really the top 50 MSAs, maybe a little more than that, but they're really focused on the top markets. But right now, they're tracking, let's see here, 2,200 properties in a new supply pipeline comprising of 600,
2,200.
2,200 in some stage of development. 2,200. I mean, I can't. It's unbelievable.
At one point, that was probably the whole industry.
Yeah, I mean,
2,200.
if you look at it, no, I mean, really honestly, if you look at the numbers from say 2005 to 2012 or 13, or even maybe they were pretty stable for the most part because they just put a lot of development. But now it's this buildup of demand has making the supply just explode now. And I mean, I truly have a hard time. And the other thing, guys, if you're doing your feasibility study, market study, whatever you call it, when you're doing it yourself, and you're pining everything on that 7.25 number or whatever it is per square feet per market, you better go deeper than that. You need to find out if those facilities in those markets are following that, and if they're still going, because there are state demand numbers, there are city top MSA demand numbers, and you really need to dig into this.
Right. I think we're in a micro industry, though. You can't take, even a metro area like Houston. There's always going to be little blocks within that. So don't just take something for granted.
No.
Looking at a macro approach.
No,
yeah.
Demand numbers are just it's just a calculation. It's academic in nature. It doesn't mean that's what's happening.
Right.
It's saying, well, in theory, that's what should be happening. But and it says 2,200 properties in the supply line there. 651 of them are under construction right now. 921 are in planning, and then 460 are whatever they consider to be at the prospective stage, and then 200 of these stores have been abandoned or deferred. I think you're going to start seeing a lot more of these projects being abandoned or deferred just because the numbers aren't working out. The construction numbers aren't going to work out. The rates aren't there to support the construction. I mean, I'm looking at some of these things right here where they're talking about individual MSAs that are increasing based on the supply that they already have. Nashville is increasing right now. What Yardi's projecting 28% above what they already have.
Crazy. That's crazy.
Oh, and it's not. I mean, and there's multiple ones that are in the 20s. Nashville was, like I said, 28%. Portland, they're projecting it about a little over 23.5. I've heard some fun things on the corporate calls this week on the Portland market. They're all not happy about that. Boston, 20%, which I'm sure some of these markets like Boston are probably undersupplied. They're probably, I would imagine they're not the easiest places to develop. Denver, which we know has been being hit with supply for quite a long time now, 17.5%. San Jose, California, 17.4. Raleigh, Durham, 15.4. Orlando, 15. And then there's some other some other MSAs that are in double digits as well. But that's a lot. I mean, if you're an existing owner and you've got 2 brand new properties that open up within a 3-mile radius of you, get ready. I mean, we're going to be off to the races in some of these markets real soon, because when you hear these things, like I said, when you hear these things about, oh, we're going to be fine on the supply, it's going to be great. I think they're more talking about nationally will be okay, or the REITs are going to be okay. You as an individual owner, especially if you're developing and you're on that timeline, that's a hefty thing to haul.
Right. When you're the guy with the big stores coming up all around you, you don't care nationally, we're going to be okay.
Right.
You're in trouble.
Yeah.
You're hurting.
Yeah. It's, like I said, I'm a New York Mets fan, which is sad as it is. But when they say, the state of baseball is fine, well, that's great, except the Mets are, 30 games below 500. They have no chance of getting get to the World Series. So to me, it doesn't matter. And this is the same thing. But right now, I mean, when we talk about rates, and I've highlighted some of these, because when you're doing your performance on your feasibilities or your market studies, you're penciling in a rate there. Well, what happens if the construction costs go up 3% and your rates drop 5%? Okay, there's a swing there in somewhere in this, or interest rates go up, a quarter point or half a point higher than what you thought they would be. That projects in there.
Right. We know steel just went up, and I would always go back and visit rates again. You go during due diligence to see if the project's feasible, and then you go again before you actually commit to check for seasonal things. If you went in the spring, you may have hit high rates, high occupancy. That might not be true. And always see if there's any natural disasters too. Some of these markets were full, but it was flooding or hurricanes or fire, something happened. So I always go back, not just one time and say, oh, this is great. Go back again, double check your work.
Right. And I like to look at it, and when you say national disasters, I look at it, I used to call it the natural disaster premium. I mean, anytime you have a big natural disaster, I'm talking about a hurricane like what you saw in Houston or in Florida, we get them all the time. Or when I used to manage in Joplin, Missouri, when we had that tornado that went through there and destroyed 3 of my competitors to the foundation. That's one of those things where you will be full for, I don't know, probably close to a year. And then it starts to, it starts to fall off because everyone stops haggling with their insurance company and everything starts getting done and things get rebuilt.
And they start rebuilding.
Right.
Yep. Flood, we saw it 7, 8, 9 months. Pretty much is how full we were. And then everybody started moving out.
That's the way it goes. And then the other part too would be the times of the year that you go. I mean, if everybody's 95%, it's July or August, well, that's the summer. Yeah, it's going to happen. But then also if you're in a college town, be careful of that. I mean, if you have a major university near you, there's a few months a year that if you're just renting to all the university students, you'll be full no matter what. So those are outside factors that you need to consider. But Megan's absolutely right. If you're developing right now and you put together a pro forma and you're going through the development process, you're getting your approvals, you're working on loan commitments, when you're starting there, go back to the market. Don't just look online. Go back and visit these things. See if the occupancies are holding. See if the rates are still where you projected them to be or close to where you projected them to be. And then also when you're projecting your rates, run some, like stress tests. That's what I call. I mean, that's what the banks do. Run a stress test. What happens if the rates drop 5%? Am I still good?
Right.
So, but I mean,
that's what we do too. Where do I need to come in, and then subtract from there?
Absolutely.
And just keep chopping at it until we get to some real numbers, and then we can tell how much we can actually afford, how much we can actually take on.
Right. I mean, as I'm looking at some of these, you already did some comparisons year over year on different unit sizes in some markets. I mean, guys, if you're in Vegas, you're doing great. I mean, the year over year increase on a 5x5 is 19%. I mean, it's phenomenal. Vegas is a great market right now, it looks like.
That's developed in Vegas, Matt.
Well, which is funny because it didn't used to be, because back when the financial crisis hit, it was probably one of the most oversupplied markets, and it was a lot of problems there. But if we're going down the list on some of these markets, and I'm going to hit, some of these, like, for example, Portland we talked about, and like the REITs are talking about it too. From 5x5s to 10x20s, they're down, the rates are down 6 to 7%. I remember that Public was talking on a quarterly call, I think it was Q1. Or it might have been Q4 of last year. They were talking about in some markets like Houston, they were dropping rates 20% in some markets.
That's crazy.
Atlanta, I think they were talking about it as well. And then I'm looking at some of these, like Charleston, South Carolina, averaging probably across the board about 8% down. Nashville, very 7%, give or take. Raleigh, Durham, wow. I mean, 10x10 climate controls are down 12%.
Well, they had 5 or 6 or 10 built within like a 5 mile, I think, recently. Oh, the supply there is just crazy.
Yeah, last year, according to Radius, the supply growth in Raleigh increased 8.4%.
Yeah,
right then for that year.
Yeah,
so, I mean, that's a lot.
I was able to speak at the North Carolina show this year, and that's what everybody was saying. The growth is just insane.
Oh yeah, and then other places like Charlotte, North Carolina is getting heavily built, and so is South Carolina. Those of you who are in Greenville, where I saw like 15 stores going in a certain mile radius, is insane. I mean,
and a lot more mixed-use storage. I'm seeing, like, multi-story is the new thing. Beautiful buildings and mixed use is what I'm seeing. You'll add a yogurt shop and an office, and it's not just storage anymore. It's not this mini warehouse shed in the backyard industry anymore.
No, shared workspace is a big thing, like the WeWork type thing. Is right. Yeah. is becoming more. I'm seeing that in more new developments, things like that to help offset. And these multi-story properties that everybody loves and we're driving by and look gorgeous, they ain't cheap. I mean, they're
No.
expensive to build, guys.
And
so
they're getting the same rates as other people. It's
Yeah.
not like they're 50% over market. They may be 5 or 10,
Right.
maybe a little more than your competitor.
Yeah. And if
You know?
what if one of your other competitors in rent up and you're in rent up, or, you know, it becomes a price.
Right.
And
Right.
the bigger companies can handle that better than you can. Especially
Right.
if they're not, you know, answering to a loan advisor, they're answering to stockholders. And when you can subsidize it with, you know, 1,000 other properties, it's not a big deal. For you, it's life and death.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
just Charlotte, San Jose, Denver, down. I mean, God, San Jose down probably 10% on average, give or take here. Charlotte's about 8-9%. And then Denver's probably down, I could say on average 10%. Nationally, we're down across the board about, I'm going to say averaging probably about 3.5 to 4%, it looks like, for the
Mm-hmm.
average rates. And these are, you know, average street rates that they're looking at. So guys, if you're looking at some of these things, and then also look at your land costs. I mean, when I'm seeing, you know, 2 acres of land or 3 acres of land going for $2 million, that's a rough, guys, with these rates, that gets
Right.
really rough go.
Right. Right. I talked to a builder yesterday. We had a nice call, and he was saying how he's not building anything smaller than 75,000 square feet up to 200,000 square feet. It's amazing how the industry's changed. Just recently, you didn't go that big. You built 30, 40, you'd phase, you know, in little chunks to grow into things. And people are just putting it down, hoping to get 75% full and sell it in 3 years. And in 3 years, we don't know what this industry is going to be. So I just hope people are making sure they can afford it the whole 3 years and not betting on an exit plan that may or may not happen.
Yeah, and it's like you were saying, you know, there were times where you could phase in different markets a little bit better. And then but you were expecting, if you phased in 40,000 square feet, you were expecting to phase in another 40. And I'm talking about rentable. So it just, the numbers don't pencil out when you build 25,000 square feet at these prices and you don't do it. It's just not enough cash flow typically. I mean, when we say these things in general, I'm not saying that if you build 30,000 square feet in Manhattan, it won't work, because the rates are obviously much better, and there's a lot of variances there. But in general, though, you know, these smaller properties that people seem to like are, which are candidates for automation, honestly, but I don't think that's been completely penciled out either on how that's all going to work. But I know some companies are doing it, but it's just hard. You know, you have to make sure that whatever you're doing, I mean, be careful about just thinking that I'm going to flip this. I mean, I remember hearing somebody was raising a lot of money and they were saying, oh, we're going to make a lot of money based on the fact that we think we can predict cap rates better than everybody else. I mean, that's a hard strategy if something goes wrong. I'm not saying it's like I'm not saying it's like on the same level of investing in Bitcoin or something and knowing where that's going to go. But it's hard to decide where all these things are going to go, when the Fed tightens up, when it doesn't. And then also, part of the reason cap rates are so low, it's not even necessarily lockstep with interest rates. It's being held back at the moment. I mean, because there's so much money coming into our industry. When that money disappears and some of these private equity companies go to invest in the next Uber or something, you know, everything's going to come back to equilibrium. And then that's where, if you've overextended yourself, you're going to get into some trouble.
Right. And they'll be calling you to help with marketing, right? And say, what do I do?
That's exactly it. I mean, guys, if you're not, you know, if this is happening to you, you know, reach out to myself or Megan. We'll have, you know, information on here. You can visit our websites. Megan is selfstoragecpa.com. Mine is 3miledomination.com. You know, we do I do hour-long consultations. I know Megan consults with people on the phone to find out what the issues are, to see if we can help. But, you know, if you're experiencing this, or if you're not sure you want to develop, or you got some questions, there's a lot of good people in this industry. Reach out to someone so you know what you're doing is, you know, no one can 100% say that it's going to be safe, but we can say that this looks insane, or this looks at least on the right track. And then do that. So with that, I don't want to take up anybody else's time today. We'll start wrapping this up. But, you know, there are some dangers, Will Robinson, out there. I think you need to be careful if you're a developer, especially if you're an independent owner. If you're an existing owner, you need to be careful. I mean, I'm not going to say where, but I've been a client of mine who had, 3 new REITs or REIT type properties open up in her 3-mile radius within the last 2 years. And then there's another one that's going to be opening up in 2 more months.
Wow.
I mean, guys, it's coming, and I don't care what they're saying on these quarterly calls, or some of these analysts and bankers are saying that these things are going to, it's all going to pencil out, everything's going to be good. Yeah, the industry in general will be just fine. But if you're an independent owner, your micro market is that's what keeps you up at night, not what's going on. If you're in Dallas, what's going on in Denver is not keeping you up at night. So be careful when you're doing this and really dig into it. And if you have some questions, like I said, my website's 3miledomination.com. Megan's is selfstoragecpa.com.
Mm-hmm.
Reach out to us. We will be happy to have a consulting call with you to see where you are. So on that note, and if Megan, do you have anything else you want to add?
No. Let us know what other topics you want covered. I think we're going to start doing this on a regular basis. So I'd love to know what people are interested in, whatever they want to know about. Otherwise, we'll just chit chat with each other. I don't mind. But if people have questions, I want to know what they want to know about so we can help them get some answers.
Right. And then with Megan being a CPA, we are going to start digging into some of that. We are going to talk about how to audit your facility, both, financially and operationally, and really making sure you're on track, because all of this stuff that we may have let go for the last few years because everything was great and we walked outside and there was, puppy dogs and cookies everywhere. That's all going to come to an end in a lot of markets very, very soon. It's coming to a theater near you. So you need to be prepared right now and start thinking about, okay, what am I going to do when I have to increase my marketing costs 50%? Or, the next question is, some of you are out there that are developing, maybe you don't even want to manage them. Maybe you want to bring in a management company, and we can talk about that, what the benefits of bringing in a management company, both independent and REIT-wise are, because there are benefits to both. So there are a lot of different topics that we're going to cover, and especially I'm going to be keeping both of us, we're going to be keeping a very good close eye on what this development pipeline is and what it's going to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because again, we both have owned and developed as well. So we're tracking it as well. And we're going to, we're staying away from markets that we don't like. I've done a number of studies that I've said, that I wouldn't be a part of.
Yep.
They're breaking
I turn away more deals than I say yes to, but that's okay. That's okay.
Even what my mentor said, he said you could easily look at 20 deals, 5 would interest you, 3 might pencil out, and 1 or 2 of them maybe you could actually do.
Yes. Yes. And it's not the sunk cost thing, right? Just because we spend a lot of time, we don't have to make it work.
Mm-mm.
It's much worse to get married and invested and say, I spent all this time and I'll do it anyway. And then it really doesn't work and now you're in trouble. So it's much better to pull the plug and waste the time. That's part of development.
Yeah. It's much more painful to have to go and sit there and beg for a bridge loan or try to figure things out, or any of these other finance techniques that you can use that are, and there's nothing wrong with them, but that are more desperate than they are standard. They can really, really cause problems. So with that being said, or
lose your property. I mean, I'm managing for a capital company now. That property was lost multiple times.
Yep. And we'll talk about that too, because I have experience managing REO properties, and you can see a lot of the mistakes that are made. But, again, when you're doing these, Megan said, really, really dig into the market. There's a lot coming in.
Yeah.
And with that, again, everybody have a great week, and we'll be back very soon. And again, visit our websites. Megan's is selfstoragecpa.com. Mine's 3miledomination.com, and feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Everybody have a great week. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Do you have a self-storage accounting question? Maybe you need to learn how to audit your facility a little more thoroughly. Maybe you need to learn how to hook up your self-storage management software to your existing accounting system. If you have an accounting question, don't wait. Visit www.selfstoragecpa.com and schedule a session with Megan Smith today. Right now, 3 Mile Domination is offering a free 1-hour self-storage strategy session to all of our listeners. This self-storage strategy session is designed to answer any self-storage question you may have. Maybe you have a question about self-storage management. Maybe you need to implement a manager hiring system at your facility. Maybe you are interested in acquiring or developing a self-storage facility. Whatever your question may be, we can help. To schedule your free session, visit www.3miledomination.com. Again, www.3miledomination.com, and click on the button that says Schedule My Free 1-Hour Self-Storage Strategy Session. Schedule yours today because seats in this program are limited. We only do a limited number of these calls per week, so schedule yours today. Again, visit www.3miledomination.com. Thank you.